I need to tell you something. Something I've been carrying around for a while now. Something that keeps me up at night, replaying the moment over and over in my head. And maybe by telling you this, it'll help someone else out there who's going through the same thing. Someone who's standing at a crossroads, wondering if they're seeing things clearly or if they're losing their mind. 6 months ago, I was supposed to get married. Had the venue booked, this beautiful place overlooking the water. Had my suit tailored, had the guest list finalized, had my vows written and rewritten about a dozen times until they were perfect. Had my entire future mapped out like a road I could see stretching ahead of me, clear and bright and full of promise. Today, I'm single. The wedding's off, the deposits are lost. My Instagram is private. And everyone in my life thinks I'm either the biggest hero who ever lived or the worst person on the planet, depending on who you ask. There's no middle ground anymore, no neutral territory. And honestly, I'm still processing it all. Still trying to figure out how I got here. How 4 years of my life just evaporated in the space of a single conversation. So let me tell you what happened. Let me tell you about the moment I realized I was about to marry a complete stranger. Let me tell you about the day my entire world fell apart. And somehow, maybe, started coming back together in a way that actually makes sense. My name doesn't matter for this story. But my little brother, his name is everything to me, everything I am, everything I've built. Let's call him Chad. He's 26 now. I'm 31. And the person I was engaged to, let's call her Karen. She's 32. Karen and I met at a friend's birthday party 4 years ago. You know that feeling when you meet someone and you just click? That's what it was like. We talked for hours that night, closed down the bar, walked around the city until sunrise, just talking about everything and nothing. Our childhoods, our dreams, our favorite movies, the places we wanted to travel to. She was smart, funny, beautiful. Had this laugh that just lit up a room. And she seemed to get me, you know? Seemed to understand the parts of me I usually kept hidden. We moved in together after a year. Got engaged after 3. And honestly, those first 3 years were good. Really good. We had our fights like any couple. But nothing major. Nothing that made me question whether this was right, until we started planning the wedding. It was about 7 months before the big day. We were sitting at my kitchen table, our kitchen table, with wedding magazines spread everywhere, sample invitations, venue photos, all of it. And we were going through the guest list. I had my list. She had hers. We were combining them, figuring out who we needed to invite, who we could cut if we had to keep costs down, all that practical stuff. And then Karen's pen stopped moving. She was looking at my list, and she tapped one name, just tapped it with her pen, not saying anything at first. Your brother, she said finally. I looked up. Yeah, Chad. Obviously he's coming. He's my best man. Right, she said, but there was something in her voice. Something tight. I've been thinking about that, and my stomach dropped. I don't know why. I had no reason to feel that little spike of anxiety, but I did. Thinking about what? I asked, maybe he shouldn't be in the wedding party. Put down my pen, closed the magazine I'd been looking at, gave her my full attention. What are you talking about? Chad's been my best man since we got engaged. Since before we got engaged. Since we were kids. I used to tell him he'd be my best man someday. I know, she said quickly. Too quickly. I just think maybe it would be better if he wasn't so prominent. Maybe he could just be a regular guest. Karen. He's my brother. My only sibling. Why wouldn't he be in the wedding party? She didn't answer right away. Just kept looking at that list. And then she said, maybe he doesn't need to come at all. I actually laughed. I thought she was joking. I said, good one. Real funny. But she wasn't laughing. She was completely serious. I'm not joking, she said. I don't think your brother should be at our wedding. And just like that, the air in the room changed. Got heavier, colder. Explain that to me, I said. My voice was calm, but inside I was already starting to panic, starting to feel like the floor was tilting under my feet. I just don't think it's a good idea. That's not an explanation, Karen. That's nothing. Why don't you want my brother at our wedding? She closed her eyes, took a breath. And then she said, Can we just not do this right now? No, I said. We're doing this right now. You just told me you don't want my only brother at our wedding, so explain it to me. Make it make sense. But she wouldn't. She just kept deflecting. Kept saying it was complicated. Kept saying we'd talk about it later. Kept trying to change the subject, and I let it go. That night, I let it go. I shouldn't have. I should have pushed harder. Should have demanded an answer right then and there. But I didn't want to fight. Didn't want to turn what was supposed to be this exciting, happy time into something ugly. So I told myself she was just stressed about the wedding. Told myself she'd come around. Told myself it was just cold feet or something. But over the next few weeks, she kept bringing it up. Different ways, different angles, but always the same message. She didn't want Chad there. And every single time, I shut it down. Told her it wasn't happening. Told her Chad's presence at my wedding was absolutely, completely, 100% non-negotiable. See, here's what you need to understand about my brother and me. Here's what Karen either didn't understand or didn't care about. Chad and I aren't just siblings. We're survivors. We're each other's family in a way that goes beyond blood. Our parents. God, where do I even start with our parents? They were young when they had me. 20 years old, still basically kids themselves. And I don't think they were ever ready to be parents. Don't think they ever really wanted to be. When I was little, they'd drop me off at my grandmother's house every weekend. Every single weekend, like clockwork. Friday night, they'd pack my bag, drive me to grandma's, and disappear until Sunday evening. Sometimes not even Sunday. Sometimes Monday morning, just in time to get me to school. And I was okay with that. Honestly. I loved my grandma. Her house was warm and safe and full of cookies and stories. It was better than being at home. Listening to my parents fight about money and jobs, and whose turn it was to deal with the crying baby. When Chad was born, I was 5 years old, and I remember thinking he was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. This tiny little person who looked like me, who was mine in a way nothing else had ever been mine. But our parents? They didn't change. If anything, they got worse. Now, instead of dropping off one kid at grandma's, they were dropping off two, and the weekends got longer, started stretching into weeks sometimes. Mom and Dad would just vanish, chasing whatever it was they thought they needed. Freedom, I guess. Youth. The life they'd lost when they became parents too early. Grandma did her best, but she was getting older, and when I turned 12, she sat me down and told me she couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't take care of 2 growing boys every weekend, every holiday, every time our parents decided they needed a break from being adults. So she talked to my parents, told them they needed to step up, be real parents. You know what they did? They gave me a key to the house, showed me how to work the stove and the washing machine, left money in an envelope on the kitchen counter every week, and then they just left. They didn't leave town or anything dramatic like that. They still lived in the same city. Still had jobs, I think, but they weren't home. They'd crash at friends' places, stay out all night, come back every few days to drop off money and make sure we were still alive, and then disappear again. I was 12 years old. Chad was 8, and I became his parent. I made his breakfast every morning, got him ready for school, walked him to the bus stop, made sure he did his homework, made dinner every night, lots of pasta and sandwiches, nothing fancy, but we didn't starve. Did the laundry, paid the bills with the money our parents left, figuring out utilities and rent like a little adult. When Chad was scared at night, I was the one who checked under his bed for monsters. When he fell off his bike and scraped his knee bloody, I was the one who cleaned it up and put on the Band-Aid. When he had his first day of middle school and was terrified, I was the one who walked him to the building and told him he was going to be amazing. I went to his parent-teacher conferences. I signed his permission slips. I taught him how to shave when he was 14. I was there for his first heartbreak, his first A+ on a test, his first everything. Our parents? They were ghosts. They existed somewhere in the world, sending money, showing up occasionally with guilt gifts and empty promises. But they weren't parents. Not really, so yeah. Chad isn't just my brother. He's my kid in a lot of ways. He's my best friend. He's my family in the truest, deepest sense of that word. When people ask me who I love most in the world, the answer is immediate. Chad. No hesitation. No question. I've told him, and I mean this with every fiber of my being, that I would take a bullet for him. That I would burn down the world for him if I had to. That the only people who could ever mean as much to me as he does are the children I haven't even had yet. So when Karen said she didn't want him at our wedding, when she said the person who raised me, who I raised, who knows me better than anyone else in the universe shouldn't be there on the most important day of my life, that wasn't just unreasonable, it was impossible. 3 days ago, feels like 3 years ago now, we were doing the final count for the venue. They needed an exact number for catering, for seating arrangements, all of that. Karen and I were at the kitchen table again. Same place we'd had that first conversation about Chad, and she brought it up. Again. Have you thought any more about what I said? About your brother? I looked up at her, and I felt this wave of exhaustion, this bone-deep tiredness at having to have the same conversation over and over. Karen, I said, trying to keep my voice level, I've told you 100 times. Chad is coming to the wedding. He's my best man. This isn't up for discussion, but no, I said. No, but. This conversation is over. It's been over. It was never really a conversation in the first place because there's nothing to discuss. And that's when her face changed. Got harder, less like she was asking and more like she was drawing a line in the sand. If he comes, she said slowly, then my family won't come. Some of them have already said they won't attend if he's there. I stared at her. Why would your family care if my brother is at our wedding? She didn't answer. Karen, why would your family care? Still nothing, just this guilty, uncomfortable look on her face, and something clicked in my brain. Something I should have seen earlier, should have understood from the beginning. This isn't about your family, is it? I said. This is about you. You don't want him there. She looked away. Wouldn't meet my eyes. And I felt this cold dread settling in my chest, this awful certainty that I was about to hear something I couldn't unhear. Tell me why, I said. My voice was quiet now. Dangerous quiet. Tell me right now why you don't want my brother at our wedding, or we're done. I mean it, Karen. Tell me the truth, or I'm calling this whole thing off. She was quiet for so long I thought she wasn't going to answer. Thought maybe she'd just get up and leave, and that would be answer enough. But then she spoke, and the words that came out of her mouth destroyed everything. I don't want to fuck at my wedding, she said. Not loud, not angry, just matter of fact, like she was stating an obvious truth. My family doesn't approve of that lifestyle, and neither do I. I don't want people like that around on the most important day of my life. The room went silent. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Couldn't process what I'd just heard. I just sat there, staring at her, and it was like I was seeing a stranger, like the woman I'd loved for 4 years had peeled off a mask and revealed someone I'd never met before. What did you just say? I whispered. You heard me. Say it again. Why? So you can act all shocked and offended? You know your brother is gay. You know my family is traditional. You had to know this was going to be an issue eventually. An issue? My voice was rising now. An issue? You just called my brother, the person I love most in this world, a slur. You just told me you think who he is, who he loves, is wrong. And you think that's just an issue we need to work through. Don't be so dramatic, she said. And there was actual annoyance in her voice, like I was being unreasonable. It's just a word, and it's just one day. He doesn't have to be there. It's not that big of a deal. Not that big of a deal. Those words kept echoing in my head. Not that big of a deal. And suddenly I was back in my living room 6 years ago. Chad was 20, I was 25. He'd asked me to come over, said he needed to talk about something important. I remember him sitting on my couch, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. He was shaking, actually physically trembling, and he couldn't look at me, just kept staring at his hands, twisting his fingers together like he was trying to hold himself together. I need to tell you something, he said. His voice was barely above a whisper. Okay, I said. You can tell me anything. He took a shaky breath. And another, and I sat there, patient, waiting, starting to get really worried because I'd never seen him like this. I'm gay, he finally said, and then immediately, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know it's wrong. I know you probably hate me now. I know. I didn't let him finish. I pulled him into a hug so tight I probably bruised him, and I felt him shake apart in my arms, felt him sob like his heart was breaking. Why are you sorry? I said into his hair. Why would you ever be sorry for this? Because everyone says it's wrong. Because Mom and Dad, if they ever bothered to know, they disown me. Because the kids at school, the people at church, everyone says people like me are going to hell, and I don't want to go to hell. I don't want to be broken. I pulled back and looked at him, really looked at him, at this beautiful, kind, sweet person who had spent his whole life terrified of this moment. You listen to me, I said. You are not broken. You are not wrong. You are perfect exactly as you are. And I love you. I will always love you. Nothing could ever change that. He didn't believe me at first. Kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. Kept expecting me to take it back or add conditions or tell him I loved him but I didn't approve. But I never did. Because I meant every word. Over the next few weeks, I watched him slowly start to believe it. Watched him become more himself. Lighter. Freer. Like he'd been carrying a weight his whole life and was finally allowed to set it down. And I made myself a promise that night. I promised that I would never let anyone make him feel that scared or that small ever again, that I would protect him from the hate and the judgment and the cruelty of people who couldn't see how extraordinary he was. And now here was Karen, the woman I was supposed to marry, doing exactly that. Being exactly the kind of person I'd promised to protect him from. I looked at her sitting across from me. This person I thought I knew, this person I'd built a life with, and I felt nothing but disgust. We're done, I said. She blinked. What? We are done. This engagement is over. The wedding is canceled. I want you out of my house. You're being ridiculous. Out! I shouted. Get out of my house right now. She stared at me like I'd lost my mind. You can't be serious. You're going to throw away 4 years over this? Over him? Over him? I stood up. Over him? You just revealed yourself to be a bigot. You just told me you hate my brother for something he can't change and shouldn't have to change. You just showed me that you've been lying to my face for 4 years about who you really are. And you think this is about me choosing him over you? That's exactly what it is. No, I said. This is about me choosing basic human decency over hatred. This is about me refusing to spend my life with someone who thinks love is conditional, and some people are less worthy than others. This is about me keeping the promise I made to my brother that I would never let anyone hurt him. This is insane. The ring, I said, holding out my hand. Give me the ring back, now. She didn't move at first. Just sat there, looking at me like she was waiting for me to calm down and take it all back. But I didn't move. Didn't lower my hand. Finally, slowly, she twisted the engagement ring off her finger, held it for a moment like she was considering refusing. But something in my face must have told her I wasn't bluffing. She dropped it into my palm. You have 10 minutes, I said, to pack whatever you can carry and get out. After that, I'm calling the police and telling them you're trespassing. This is my home too. No, I said. It's my house. Your name isn't on the lease. You have 10 minutes. 9 now. I've never seen anyone move so fast. She grabbed bags, started throwing clothes in them, makeup, toiletries, moving through the apartment like a tornado. I just stood there, watching, making sure she left. 8 minutes later, she was gone. Door slamming behind her. Engine starting in the parking lot. Taillights disappearing down the street. And then I was alone. I sat down on the floor. Didn't even make it to the couch. And I just sat there, staring at the wall, trying to process what had just happened. 4 years, gone in 10 minutes, a wedding canceled, a future destroyed, and somewhere in the back of my mind, a voice saying, "But you did the right thing. You know you did the right thing." The next day, I started making calls. Venue, canceled. They weren't happy about it, wouldn't refund the deposit, but I didn't care. Photographer, canceled. Caterer, canceled. DJ, canceled. Every single vendor. I called them and told them the wedding was off, and then I called our friends and family, and I told them exactly why. I didn't sugarcoat it. Didn't make excuses. Didn't try to protect Karen's reputation. I told them, Karen said she doesn't want Chad at the wedding because he's gay. She used a slur to describe him. She said she doesn't approve of that lifestyle, so the wedding is off, permanently. Some people were shocked. Some weren't, Some admitted they'd always thought Karen was a bit conservative, judgmental, but they'd hoped it wasn't that bad. My friends were incredibly supportive. Every single one of them called or texted to say they stood by me, that I did the right thing, that they were sorry they hadn't seen it earlier. Karen's friends? Mixed bag. Some quietly distanced themselves from her. Others defended her, said I was overreacting, said everyone is entitled to their beliefs. And her family? They came after me like wolves, text after text after text, calls at all hours, voicemails full of screaming, how dare I humiliate their daughter? How dare I ruin her life over a disagreement? I was going to hell for supporting sin. I'd regret this for the rest of my life. I'd never find anyone as good as Karen. On and on and on. This barrage of hatred and guilt and manipulation. I blocked every single one of them. Didn't read most of the messages. Didn't listen to the voicemails. Just saw the names and blocked them. Karen herself kept calling from different numbers. Texting. Showing up at my workplace. And her message was always the same. I was overreacting. It was just a word. She didn't really mean it. We could work through this. I was throwing away 4 years over nothing. But here's the thing that really got to me. The thing that confirmed I'd made the right choice. Not once. Not one single time. Did she apologize for what she said about Chad? She apologized for upsetting me, for how things came out, for the misunderstanding. But she never said, I'm sorry I called your brother a slur. Never said, I was wrong about gay people. Never said, I shouldn't have let my prejudice hurt someone you love, because she wasn't sorry. She didn't think she'd done anything wrong. She just wanted me to get over it and go back to planning a wedding she could enjoy. Chad found out, of course. News travels fast in our friend group, and he showed up at my door 2 days after everything imploded. I opened the door and he just stood there, looking at me with these heartbroken eyes. You didn't have to do that, he said quietly. It's okay. I don't need to be at the wedding. I just want you to be happy. And something in my chest cracked. I pulled him inside, sat him down, and I looked at my little brother, this person I'd raised, protected, loved my entire life. And I said, listen to me. My wedding day is supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and it wouldn't be happy without you there. But more than that, I can't be happy with someone like her. Someone who hates you for being who you are. Someone who would ask me to choose between her and you. But you loved her, he said. You were going to marry her. I loved who I thought she was, I said. But that person doesn't exist. The real Karen is someone who thinks love is wrong, who thinks you're less than human, who would smile to your face and hate you behind your back. And I can't spend my life with someone like that. I won't. He cried. I cried. We sat on my couch and grieved the life I'd almost had, the mistake I'd almost made. And then he said something I'll never forget. I'm proud of you, he said. I'm proud to have you as my brother. And that's when I knew, really knew, that I'd done the right thing. Because at the end of the day, Karen was right about one thing. I did choose him over her. But what she'll never understand is that it wasn't even a choice. Chad is my family. My real family, the person who's been there through everything, who I've built my life around, who I would protect with everything I have. Karen was just someone I loved for a while, someone who turned out to be wearing a mask, someone who showed me exactly who she was when it mattered most. So yeah, the wedding's off. My future looks different now. Emptier in some ways, but I can look my brother in the eye. I can sleep at night. I can know that I kept my promise. And honestly, that's worth more than any wedding could ever be. So if you're out there and you're in a similar situation, if someone you love is asking you to choose between them and your family, your values, your integrity, I'm here to tell you, choose yourself. Choose the people who've earned your loyalty. Choose truth over comfortable lies, because masks always slip eventually. Better to see them before you say, I do,